Hey everybody, this is Dr. McCollum, and I want to go over what cellular detox actually looks like. So to coin a phrase from Dr. Dan Pompa, fix the cell to get well. Now this is all pretty well explained in my new book, Turn Back Your Biological Clock, which of course you can get on Amazon, and that's going to go through this, but I want to try to make this really simple. Why do we get sick? And if we really take a look at the cells in our body, this will make it very clear to you. We have 75 trillion cells in our body. All of those cells are alive, and they all work as groups, they all work as organs and systems, and then they all work together to try to let us do what we want to do, which is thrive in life. So if we look at a cell, this is very important to understand that the cell has a membrane, and that membrane is made out of essential oils and gates and pathways that allow nutrients in, hormones to communicate, fuel in, and then of course the toxins have to get out of the cell, or it will be like driving down the road in a jalopy with a hose and the exhaust pipe coming into the car, and you're driving along, and the more and more toxins you get inside the cab of the car, the sicker and sicker you get, and it could kill you. And that's exactly what happens at a cellular level. So, and think about it, when we eat food, it goes into our stomach. There's already some digestive enzymes that start to, and acids and stuff that start to break down the food. Then it goes into our small intestine, then to our large intestine, and eventually out of the body. That's how we accumulate food. Now the nutrients are absorbed in various parts of the body out of the large intestine. They're broken down by fatty acids and different enzymes in the intestine, as well as something from your gallbladder called bile, that all break down the food you eat into tiny little particles called, little tiny little food particles. And those get into the bloodstream, and then all of those particles in the bloodstream, being amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins, minerals, various things along that way, go through the bloodstream and get distributed to the cell, where on demand the cell will take in exactly what it needs. Maybe it needs 4 vitamin A's, and it might need a little bit of glucose to keep the energy going. Might need some hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid hormone, any of those hormones that all cells need. Every cell in your body needs thyroid hormone, all 75 trillion of them, except for one. The red blood cells don't. So when these nutrients float around in our bloodstream and get near a cell wall, they're attracted into that cell via gates or pathways. So there's a gate that will open and allow let's say glucose, which is a fuel, and the other one is ketones, which are a fuel. That comes from fat. This comes from everything from carbohydrates to protein. All meat breaks down to glucose. Every carbohydrate from broccoli to sugar or corn breaks down to glucose. Those get into the body, into the cell through gates and channels that allow the fuel to get into the cell body, and then also into the mitochondria. By now you've all probably heard of mitochondria. It's like the carburetor of a car or the fuel injection system. The cell wall to the mitochondria is also made of real essential oils that have to be flexible in order for the supplements to get in. Once it gets into the mitochondria, the glucose or the ketones are burned and create energy. That's how every one of those 75 trillion cells get energy so that we can function. Now there's 2 different types of burners in our cell. One would be like a big old stove that you throw damp wood in, and it burns really smoky and it's really hot and it burns really quick. That's glucose. Like if you eat some bread, that goes and it burns up real quickly, kind of like pine wood. It's very, very toxic. If you go to your gas stove and turn it on, it goes and that's a blue flame. That's how fat or ketones burn in our body. Very clean and very efficient, non-toxic, and our brain, being made of fat, love ketones. We have been starving our body of ketones. They don't even know what it is very much because we have such an incredibly vast amount of carbohydrates that we eat because of the Food and Drug Administration telling us that that's what we should eat. A little bit of treason on their part, if you ask me. Anyway, so the mitochondria takes that fuel and goes kaboom and makes power. Just like your car exhaust is created, that exhaust comes out of the mitochondria and has to get out of that cell wall. Then it will get back into the bloodstream and be taken to the large intestines where it is filtered out of the body, the large intestine and the kidney, where it's filtered out of the body. So actually what happens is there's a big organ called the liver. The liver is right here. And the liver takes that bad blood that's gone through all those 75 trillion cells, and it dumps the bad blood into the liver, and clean blood comes out. And that whole process starts over again. So the problem is, and why we get sick and why we have so many genetic turned on diseases, which are simply bad genes getting turned on by toxic cells, is because the liver gets so plugged up, just like the vacuum filter. If you keep vacuuming, it's not going to pick anything up, and pretty soon the vacuum is going to blow up. So you've got to clean that vacuum filter, just like we have to clean the liver so that it can be more efficient. So once we start to do the first phase of our detox, it's going to be to get the liver working well, get the kidneys working well, which filter your blood into the urine. Your liver filters it into the large intestine, and then we hopefully get it out of the body, providing we don't have a messed up colon, which 94% of the people in the United States have some kind of leaky gut. So that means you have intestinal permeability, which means that if you have these tight junctions in your intestines, so when the food stuff goes into the colon, this is out of the colon, it's these little teeny things that allow the good nutrients to come in between the cells. Those are the junctions. But when you have a bad inflamed colon, like colitis and various things like that, then those holes, those gates get too big, and large food particles and bacteria get out of the colon into the bloodstream, and that can make you sick. This is one of the main reasons we have so many autoimmune diseases in our country and the world. So our goal is, well, let me backtrack. Now, what happens here when all of this is polluted and toxic? Your cell walls become inflamed, and this is really the important understanding. Fix the cell to get well. Until we get all 75 trillion cells to work correctly in our body, we have almost zero hope of being healthy. You can't medicate yourself out of a chronic condition. So, of course, Western medicine, we do a lot of stuff with peripheral neuropathy here. The patients are given gabapentin that masks the symptoms, or Cymbalta, or they're told it's in their head, and then they start lopping off things when they no longer can function or live well. So now we understand that the cell wall is really the key to this whole thing I've been explaining. When the cell wall gets inflamed, it's like, have you ever had poison oak where your eyes got swollen shut, or knew somebody that did? Well, if your eyes are swollen shut, you still have eyes, you just can't see. So you got to get the swelling down so you can see. When your cell walls are inflamed, or all of your organs are inflamed because of toxicity, then these gates and channels are plugged. They're not able to let good stuff in and bad stuff out very easily. And as importantly, let's say with diabetes, which 60% of our country are either diabetic or pre-diabetic, basically insulin is supposed to open one of those gates and channels for sugar or glucose to get into the cell, to get into the mitochondria and make energy. Well, when these things are swollen, one insulin can't open that gate anymore. So your brain goes, okay, pancreas, make some more insulin. Pretty soon you've got all this insulin trying to push that gate open. It's like, the power you got almost a battering ram trying to open the cell wall. Pretty soon that won't even work. So what do? You go to the medical doctor and they give you artificially made insulin. So now you've got so much insulin trying to open this rusty gate to get the sugar in that your blood becomes like orange juice with pulp in it. It's so thick with insulin that it actually causes its own problem. So hyperinsulinemia means too much insulinemia in the blood. So now you've got too thick a blood in already toxic blood floating around in the body, getting into the brain. Every blood cell goes through your brain, the same part, 4 times a minute. When your heart pumps, it pumps that same blood cell through every finger 4 times a minute. So it's a pretty amazing system. But what ends up happening when your body's toxic and you can't get the insulin to work and get the stuff in the cell, you now have too much insulin and other bad products in your blood, especially with things like glyphosate and forever chemicals like the Teflons and stuff. It actually, when you look at the brain is covered with something called a blood-brain barrier, which protects bad stuff from getting in and only lets good stuff in. All of those things break down and open up the gates to the blood-brain barrier, just like your intestine will open up with inflammation. And guess what gets in there? More plaque, more toxins, and insulin. Hyperinsulinemia has another name. It's also called diabetes type 3. Diabetes type 3 has another name. It's called Alzheimer's disease. So actually, by having all of this situation going on, the end product is many diseases, but especially dementia and or Alzheimer's. Because as the diabetes type 3 gets going, it lays down plaque in the brain and deadens those short circuits, those memory channels, and that will end up with even a greater and greater problem down the road. So that's the problem. Okay, now real quickly, I'm going to go over how to fix this problem, because this is going on with everybody. Now there's 3 things, actually 4 things. We call it the tetralogy of toxicity. One is heavy metals. We all have them. We get them 4 generations down through mom's umbilical blood. If you've come in and got the oligo scan, you have a pretty good readout of what is in your cells, actually down to the cellular level. Heavy metals, they, for instance, mercury. The number 1 mental symptom of mercury is anxiety. Lead, a lot of us come from the lead generation. Number 1 mental symptom for lead toxicity is depression. So we have heavy metals, molds, which especially in Santa Cruz County, you can't get away from molds. And molds love dark places. They like to get into things like, places in your mouth, in between the teeth, in the dark parts of your body. And in fact, when heavy metals get laid down in your tissue, molds go and keep them company. They love to hang out together and have a party. And as that heavy metal and mold create an environment, things like bacteria, viruses, protozoa, and various other little creatures get in there and they infect the area. They're called hidden infections. There's many different ones of these. As an example, I was having terrible sciatic pain 3 or 4 years ago. I couldn't even walk. Now, I did break my back when I was 12, and I got an MRI and they all said you need surgery, which I didn't want to get. Well, one day I was leaving a friend's office and I took a step and my appendix ruptured. It blew up. And the minute it blew up, my sciatic pain went away. I was in the hospital, Western medicine saved my life, but that sciatic pain never came back. So the hidden infection of a blown up appendix, swollen, put enough pressure on that sciatic nerve to cause me not to be able to walk. It was pretty bad. So hidden infections. The 4th one are chemicals like glyphosate, forever chemicals. There's 250 billion tons of toxins dumped on the planet every year, year after year. And all these chemicals that are made by man might take years to make. When they get in your body, your liver has a nanosecond to break that down or it will kill you. So the body's amazing. The greatest physician who ever lives right inside of you. So we just got to tap into it. Number one step, these are chemicals like glyphosate and stuff that open up the blood-brain barrier even worse and drive the toxins deeper in there, is what we call the prep phase. The first thing we're gonna do, if you want to fix a cell to get well, is prepare your downstream detox pathways to work better. So the large intestine, the bladder, the liver, your lymphatic drainage system, which is a vast system, 4-5 times more lymphatic fluid in your body than blood, constantly splashing and cleaning the cells. That system has to be fixed. It might take 1 to 2 months just to do that. If you ever try to do a detox without doing that, you're stirring up the pond, and it might feel good for a minute. You'll probably make yourself sick. There is no quick solution here. It's taken 4 generations to get toxic that we know of. Once we feel pretty good about the preparation of your body. The next part is the body phase. This is where we're actually going to start to pull heavy metals, molds, and different toxins out of your body from the neck down. And we do this because we're trying to open this up so that when we dump the brain, it has somewhere to go. So what we call a concentration gradient. In high school, you had 2 beakers with a membrane between it. You put red water in here, it was clear. Pretty soon it was all the same color. That's the way the body works. We can't detox the brain till there's some place for it to go. So the body phase might take 3, 4, 5 months to do, just so that we can venture to get the heavy metals and toxins out of the brain. So the third phase is the brain phase. That's where we actually use some things called chelators, which we actually do in the body as well, to grab onto these things and pull them out of the body. And I'm going to just finish with one example. Don't get fooled by chelators on the shelf in the health food store. Chelators have to be very strong, and I'll give you an example. We've probably all been in a gas station. We put in our quarter, and there was that mechanical arm that we wanted to go get that bear or whatever, and then we lifted that thing up, and we almost got it out, and it dropped. Those are weak chelators. They grab different toxins in the body, but they can't get it all the way out. So you're just stirring up the pond, probably making things worse, redistributing the toxins all throughout your body. So it's very important that you have strong chelators. We have the best. Dr. Dan Pompa is the mastermind behind this. I'm one of his platinum doctors. We've been working together for 7 years, myself and about 20, 30 other docs. We make sure this works well. We've streamlined it. We know what's going to happen, what bumps in the road you will have as your body's detoxing on its path to becoming optimally healthy. So there's a lot of things you can do. You can do the neurotoxic questionnaire, definitely the oligo scan, so we can see what your toxic load is. And of course, chiropractic frees up the nerves to the 75 trillion cells so that your body is communicating to your brain. And it's a great ride, great way to enjoy the rest of your life. You haven't worked all this time to be suffering and bedridden or a captive of your own body. So let us help you. Really hope this was helpful for you. Fix the cells, get well, and we're here to help. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care.